Hey everybody, so welcome to another session of Design to Heal. And this is really a discussion about the ability and the willingness of people to look at past memories and see what's attached to these memories in terms of belief systems. And a lot of the belief systems that we have about life are created by our family, and I've just been reflecting on this recently with a lot of different EMDR clients. And what I want to talk about today is the idea of pity versus compassion. I think that we are learning in the recent past, and we are becoming more aware of what is happening with people who are now in their 20s, 30s, and 40s who might be immigrants or whose parents have gone through terrible suffering in war-torn areas. And I'm from Los Angeles, and so much of the immigrant Latino community had come from devastating circumstances in the Central America, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Panama, other countries in the area, certainly in South America during the 1970s and 80s, where there was a great deal of violence with military coups, many of which were instigated by the United States government. And these people have come, to America to settle and create new lives. And then you have people from Southeast Asia, millions of them, from Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam in the 1970s, 1980s, to create new lives for themselves, right? And then you have, tens of millions of people, coming out of the Middle East, from, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, even Iran during the late 1970s, during the takeover of the government by the Ayatollah. And these people, came to the United States. They went to Europe. They went to the UK. They went to the continent, and they all tried to create new lives for themselves. And their children now, who are maybe in their 20s, 30s, and 40s now, are dealing with as they become adults, as they become individuated, as they get their own sense of agency. They're confronted by aging parents, where they are in that phase of their lives when they must decide to become completely separate, individuated people as parents or as single people, with their own identity, their own agency, their own capabilities, and their own set of beliefs that are separate from their family of origin. And all too often we just aren't equipped with this. I'm the youngest of 10, right? And so my parents had me when they were a generation older, right? So right, my mom had me when she was 45. My mom would be 110 years old this year, right? And so in my case, I can tell you that my parents, turned 18 in 1942, right, when World War II started, and they both went into the military, and they met in India during the war, and they were in the Far East for the whole war up until 1947, and they came back to America. My mom was an Irish immigrant, and my father was from rural Missouri. And they came back to America very scarred and very damaged by what they saw, and the scope of the human suffering and death. And of course, in my home, there was never once anything ever uttered once about the war when I was growing up. And so, but we learned the military way of doing things. We learned that any kind of suffering, any kind of difficulty was swept under the carpet. There was nothing to be spoken about because their emotional sense of themselves was buried, right? When you bury one emotion, guess what you do? You bury all emotion, right? And so when you're trying to suppress rage or sadness or anxiety, guess what? It's a full court press on suppressing virtually all emotion, and so there just wasn't very much emotion in my home. And of course, I come from a Germanic, very Catholic Irish family, right? And so I really fully understand this. And in fact, it wasn't until I was much older, in my late 30s, that I realized how much damage was done to me by the generational trauma of my parents, who came out of um, a war-torn Asia. And I think, what I'm confronting very frequently with people from Latin America, from Southeast Asia, from the Far East or the Near East, and the Middle East, is a sense of dealing with all these various types of emotions and various difficulties, where the elephant in the living room is not named, and that is a name which is generational, chronic PTSD from being exposed to a great deal of violence or death or near death, as they're running away from either international war or civil war. And this also counts for Africa. I spend a lot of time in Spain, and there's so many people here from African countries that are war torn right now, and they must be walking around with a great deal of PTSD, right? And so I want to talk about that today, and what we can do about it, and how EMDR works. And I'm always looking for solutions, of course, right? That's the whole key to this thing, is to find solutions. And I think that EMDR offers very rapid progress, rapid solutions to some of these difficult problems. And so the first thing that we want to do is to maybe identify, right? We want to identify the possibility of generational trauma for people who are now in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, who came from these families all over the place. I'll give an example of something that we just don't think about. When people cross the border in the United States from Mexico to Arizona, New Mexico, even parts of Southern California, that is desert. In the spring and summer, that can be very, very hot. It can be north of 100, 110 degrees Fahrenheit. And so you oftentimes get people who die even on the traveling right on the voyage across the border to set up and create a new home, right? And this is not very far away from our time right now, right? And the things that people have seen in Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, especially recently, is going to create a lot of chronic PTSD, and has already created that with families today. And so we want to be able to allow children of parents who came from these devastating circumstances to allow them, to give them permission to create pity. And again, I've been emphasizing recently that the idea here is not to excuse behavior. It's not to let people off the hook. It's not to whitewash what happened. That diminishes us. It diminishes what happened to us. It makes us feel less than. It makes us feel invisible. It makes us feel like we don't matter, and that that's not acceptable. And it doesn't count for healing. It makes matters worse, right? We have to name names here, and we have to name events, and we have to bring forward those memories, and the bilateral stimulation, finger movement with the eyes, is a great way to activate the brain with the if for lack of a better word, the brain and the mind together, right? Physical and mental, right? In order to bring forth these memories, because these memories, these traumatic memories, they live in our body. There's so much evidence now that these memories live in our body. And as these painful, traumatic memories live in our bodies, we get sick, and there's so much evidence now that these issues with chronic fatigue syndrome, irritable bowel syndrome, even going so far as some of these cancers are from just having toxic anger and rage and sadness just living inside of our bodies. And so BLS is the way in which we can connect our body to our mind and allow us to bring these memories forward and to have these memories attached to emotions, and to see what emotions are coming up. And oftentimes these emotions initially are a great deal of sadness, anger, rage. How could they behave this way toward me? I was only a child, right? Why did they treat me like I was a soldier? Why did they think that berating me was an acceptable form of nurturing? That's what I got. My parents spent their, late teens and early 20s until they were 23, 24 years old in a war. I mean, it wasn't just a matter of being in a barracks somewhere or being on a fort, somewhere in America. They were living their lives in a war zone, right, where there was no R&R. They didn't get to go home for 3 months. They were living a war 24/7. And so what did you do in the Army? They both were in the Army. You berate people into good behavior. And so I think millions of people came back from World War II thinking that berating your children was a way to instill a sense of, right thinking, appropriate behavior, a way to get the group to interact, in a better way, to keep the family unit in line, and so forth. And so, we know now that has, it often has catastrophic, consequences, right? Because it causes young children, young adults to believe that if I just follow orders and if I do exactly what what is demanded of me, not what is asked of me, what is demanded of me, then I will get love. And if I fail to do that, then I won't get love. And so we bring that into our adult lives and create very unhealthy relationships. And so how do we get out of this, right? The way to get out of this is by talking exactly about these beliefs we got from our parents and whether those beliefs work anymore. And the evolution of EMDR in 3, 4, 5, 6 rounds of eye movement, which could be about a minute apiece, over 1, 2, 3 hours, does create an evolution where those beliefs shift, right? And it shifts from an initial sense of disbelief, right, when we allow ourselves to integrate the event and the emotion. And we're saying, my God, this happened to me. And then as we move forward, slowly, gently, compassionately, with love and in a safe environment, we can see that a little bit of pity evolves. And that pity is not necessarily, it doesn't let people off the hook. It's not simpering. It's not icky. It's not gross. I hear these words. Pity is somebody has done something to me and I don't understand their behavior, and I don't understand the motivation for their behavior, and I don't understand the meanness and the rottenness behind why these people did this to me, but I understand it. I get it. And I'm willing to step back from this and to allow the human heart to enter in and create forgiveness in this relationship for my benefit, not for the benefit of somebody else, right? And so that's pity, which is very, very different from compassion, right? Compassion is, I understand this person because I've done this too. I understand this person because this is kind of the way that I am. It's like when, a bunch of people have a bicycle race, right? And everybody's, their bodies are killing them, after a bicycle race. All the people in the race can relate. And that is compassion, very different from pity. And so having pity for the oppressor is a way out, because I don't have to be there in the gutter, down there beating up the oppressor and living with that anger and that shame and that sense of rage or sadness or remorse or grief because of what that person took away from me. I can detach from it. And that is really the important magic of pity that we have for the oppressor. It's not for them, it's for us. And again, a very big difference from compassion. And when you're talking about somebody who grew up in a war zone, I got to say, I got, exactly 0 sentences from my father about what he saw. But, I have had mentors who've told me, doesn't that tell you enough information that his experiences were so painful that he couldn't even utter words to describe what happened to him? And with my mom, I got about 3 sentences of 5 years of their lives. Nothing, right? And so this is where we can have pity in order to understand parents and move forward and shift those beliefs. And I promise you that I have seen this sense of pity shift people's beliefs in how they can understand their parents better. If nothing else, because they can get distance, they can get detachment, they can get that individuation, which allows me to have agency. My parents don't have agency over me anymore, especially when they're dead. These dead ghosts can have agency over us. I promise you, even absent parents, right? Parents who get divorced and the father and the mother disappears, that can still have a great deal of influence over us, right? And so that's it for today. I'll hope to see you next time. Please leave a note or a comment. I'm really happy to send you an audiobook of my book on EMDR. Just leave a comment in the below, and I'm happy to send you a audiobook of my EMDR book. Thanks.